From the 809 Restaurant and Lounge in the heart of Inwood, New York City, welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air, where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home in what we affectionately call upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we are turning our spotlight on filmmaker and native New Yorker, Lisa D'Appolito. Lisa's 2018 documentary, Love Gilda, about Saturday Night Live founding cast member Gilda Radner, opened the 2018 Tribeca Film Festival and went on to be nominated for 2 Emmys. It also opened the 2019 Inwood Film Festival, I'm proud to note. Love Gilda was Lisa's, we'll say, professional directorial debut, even though she did many things in the past. But it followed a long career as an actor and as an executive producer for media for FCB Healthcare. Lisa is currently at work on a number of projects, including Albert's Puniverse, a portrait of maverick independent filmmaker Albert Pyun as he works to complete his final film. We're going to talk about that and so much more. But first, Lisa, let me welcome you to Inwood Artworks On Air.
Hey, Aaron, thank you so much for inviting me. I really think what you're doing is amazing.
Thanks. I really do appreciate that. And the feeling is quite mutual, as you might know. So let me ask, let's just check in first. So let me ask you, how are you and how are you doing right now?
Mostly great, but some days are not good days. It just, you never know what a day will bring, especially now. But I've been pretty busy since the lockdown or whatever you want to call it. So that's good. And Inwood is a good place to kind of be inside when you're if you're not out in the woods, but has been a good place to concentrate.
It's a great place. I feel it's very restorative right now. Being in Inwood in northern Manhattan with the parks and the way it's spaced out, you don't feel like you're on top of someone else. I think it's been quite good for mental health right now. And I've seen you walking out and about sometimes and waving from our social distance, our tracks that we're on moving through. And it's like we're on those, like, what do you call it? Like those, like Macy's Christmas, like, railroad car windows. Hi, how you doing? Good to see you. See you next time. Around. But it's also very encouraging to see you out there and seeing your wheels turning and hearing about your projects, which we're going to talk about now. So first off, I think we need to talk a little bit and tell us about Gilda Radner and how you came to create Love Gilda. And I understand it has to do with your luck for Gilda's Club, right?
I've been working with Gilda's Club, volunteering for about, I think it's 9 years now. And Gilda's Club is on Houston Street, except now it's virtual. For now. It's a place for people and their families who are going through cancer. And it was founded by Jean Wilder in honor of Gilda, who had her own ovarian cancer. And her wish was for people to have a place that they can go to together, people who are going through the same situation. So I was doing the fundraising videos, and over a period of time, when I would interview the members, probably twice a year, and we'd do like eight interviews, about three or four of the 8 members would talk about Gilda and how they had an association with Gilda because she wrote a book about her cancer journey. So people were very connected to her. And the sense of always finding humor, even in the darkest of times, it was Gilda's message. And I think it resonated. And I thought, wow, she would be a great person to do a film about. It kind of came, it wasn't meant to be a film. I kind of fell into it. But it was very rewarding to spend time with Gilda and watch her amazing performances.
Well, you've offered such a gift to people, and I've seen it firsthand at the Inwood Film Festival. I mean, everyone can connect with her message and her life. And it's been about 2 years since it premiered, which is amazing to say. And gosh, what a 2 years they've been for you. I'm curious, so now, if you've been thinking about Gilda at all, who of course faced her own challenges as an artist, and as you're navigating your world as an artist right now, being so busy, has it informed your world right now?
In a different sort of way, because I was very lucky that Gilda's brother gave me access to so many of her archives, and in those archives is a screenplay she wrote, journals of hers. And so in some ways, it doesn't inform me, but I feel like I should be doing something with this. And I kind of needed a little break from Gilda to think about what can be done with her materials, because she left behind amazing stuff.
Yeah, that screenplay, for instance, you mentioned. I mean, it's not to mention other writings and journals she's had. It's a whole I guess you've had more time, maybe you could say, to have the words of her words and her works marinate within you a little longer, right?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring it up because yesterday I was going through my iPhoto library, and for some reason I have 100 photos of each photo I have. I don't know what happened. but
Wow.
I was going through all of Gilda's photos, which I have thousands of, and I was narrowing them down, and I was thinking, wow, there's all these photos that people have never seen of her also. But that's kind of something I need to pick up.
Well, it's great to have that to work on at your own leisure, but you also, like you said, you've had to move on and refresh yourself as most artists do, and you have new interests. And one is your current project. I'm especially interested in you talking about Albert's Puniverse, which is a portrait, for those who don't know, of filmmaker Albert Pune. Can you tell us a little bit about him, for those who don't know him, and about what led you to his story?
Albert was, and still is, a cult figure. And he did a lot of post-apocalyptic films with really big stars like Jean-Claude Van Damme. He made 55 movies in his career. He's a prolific filmmaker, kind of like the modern Ed Wood, the Ed Wood of the 80s and 90s. And even though his films on Rotten Tomatoes ratings are 0 to 40,
But you know what? He's consistent.
he's consistent. But he has a fan base around the world, and there's a lot of filmmakers who have been very inspired by him and feel that he was ahead of his time in what he was doing, because he didn't have the computers and the special effects of those times.
You and I have talked about it in the past. He has a certain, because he's been so true to his way, he has a certain admiration for so many people who are filmmakers, and also those actors who's worked with him in the past, who've been very generous, right, with wanting to be a part of this new project.
Well, I think Albert is a filmmaker's filmmaker. There's nothing in his life more important than movies. And he loves filmmakers, he loves actors, he loves the art of making film. I mean, I think, and he just kept going no matter what, always finding funding, always finding projects, never letting people say no. So there's something about him, and he's helped a lot of people in his life too.
Being the subject, you're a filmmaker, he's a filmmaker. Have you gleaned anything from Pune's approach or process or his attitude as a filmmaker that has influenced you now and how you think about making movies?
I think more you just have to keep going. You have to not let anything get in your way. I think you have to, what it's opened my eyes to is maybe looking at different genres of films that I never would have looked at before, because I've never been into sci-fi or those post-apocalyptic films. And when I watch his films now, I see this sense of humor in them. And so it's opened my eyes in terms of making films, but Albert has the same disposition of many great directors that I've met. They're just really wonderful people, and they want to hear your story. They're interested in you. The best directors to me are the ones who are want to know about you and are interested in other people and their lives. So I think that's and we didn't talk about it, but Albert has a terminal illness. So he's dealing with a vascular dementia. So his cognitive time is going less and less every day, and it's harder for him to work on things. But he's such an artist in the sense that he's finding inspiration in all this. He has these delusions and these hallucinations, and they're all about making movies. And so he's actually using that in the movies that he's working on now. So it's just a true maverick filmmaker.
Inspirational.
Yeah.
Someone who, the way out is through, right? Just keep going. Keep finding a way of doing it.
Oh, sorry.
Well, that's all right. We got another one. No problem. And so where are you in the process right now with that film?
Well, I'm working on another film too, which I'll tell you about. So that film, it's been hard to raise money for that film, I have to say. So it's semi in post-production. There's an editor who's working on it on his downtime. but it hasn't really got the funding that I was expecting, because I really thought, like, oh my God, this is such a great story. Albert's such a great story, but it's been a kind of hard sell.
Pretty normal right now in the arts. If for those who aren't paying attention, the arts are struggling right now during COVID, and funding's been cut universally across the board towards everything, and everyone's just holding on. There are no cinemas open right now. If we're in a time capsule right now, I want people to hear this. And this is 2020. The movie theaters are closed. The only thing you have is on your phone or on your subscription services on your TVs. Yes, these are strange times. Going back to Albert, the inspiration is to keep moving on and keep moving forward. And you have another project right now about beloved children's entertainer Sherry Lewis and her creation Lamb Chop. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that one is getting a lot of support behind it. And I was just in Los Angeles and Las Vegas shooting the sizzle reel for it. But it's a great, which is shooting in COVID is another whole different situation with precautions and taking tests and everyone being very careful in interviewing people like you're doing now with a mask on, which is a little a little difficult in some sense because you can't see the expressions of people but Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop, this is another. Lamb Chop is very similar to Gilda. Sherry is very different, but Lamb Chop has that beloved, for people who know who Lamb Chop is, they like, I love Lamb Chop, just like I love Gilda. But it's interesting because Lamb Chop is Sherry. So that's kind of the interesting storyline, is that she was a ventriloquist. And one of the only really on camera with a puppet that I know of. A lot of ventriloquists have their big dummies, and she's just amazingly talented. And it's a fun project to work on, as you can imagine, watching Lamb Chop and Charlie Horse and all the other puppets.
Does it remind you of growing up in Greenwich Village doing puppet shows? On the stairwell when you were young.
Oh God, you read that somewhere? It was like, yeah. I mean, I actually did marionettes was my thing, but
truth is out.
But I do love puppets. I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't like Elmo and there's something. I think people are you remember things in your childhood, whether you have good or bad childhood, you still remember those iconic characters on television that made you happy.
Yeah. The only reason I bring it up is that I think for a lot of us as artists, we see things from a point of innocence a lot. And there's something very basic and raw and primal about our connection to our work. And I just thought that might be something that's always resonated within you. Because I have things like that in my life that go way back to when I was a kid. So just curious. That's all.
Well, I think it's my love of performers. My love of really, as I used to be an actress and I know a million actors, a small percent of people make it. And there's so many amazingly talented geniuses. And so I'm always curious of how they got there. And then when I look at them, I look at their lives, I look at their childhood, I look at their career, and you see it all kind of culminates to who they are, whether you're Gilda Radner or you're Albert Pune or you're Sherry Lewis. It's sort of this whole history behind who you are that makes your art so different and amazing.
Well, I think it's very safe to say, having seen your work many times over, that you are considered one of our geniuses up here in Northern Manhattan. Your work is very inspirational. You're a wonderful artist. You keep on going. You have a great vision. And by the way, if you don't know her, she's just a wonderful person. And I think it all starts right there. And you are, like I said, your work is very inspirational. So just before we wrap things up here, is there anything else in the works for you beyond Sherry and Albert you want to perhaps long-term that you'd want to share? Or any aspirational projects?
Oh, Gilda's screenplay, doing something with that. And since I'm documentaries, this is totally out of my element for me. And maybe I started a short film based on one of her short stories, but I don't think it's very good. So maybe it's to learn how to develop her projects. I think the script deserves an A-list director with an A-list actor, A-list comedy director with an A-list team. Like, that really deserves to have something more than who I am right now. But I think for the short stories, it would be wonderful if I could bring one of her short stories to be a short film. So that would be really my inspiration.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Well, Lisa, it's been such a pleasure talking with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you. It was great. And again, what you're doing up in Inwood, what you've been doing for the past few years is pretty amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's the kind of stuff that keeps me going. So before we sign off, is there anywhere we could send people about your projects current and maybe upcoming?
Well, maybe that's something I have to do is probably my website, which I don't have to have, I'm on, I still use my Love Gilda Facebook page for people to contact me if they want to. But if you want to see Love Gilda, you go to lovegilda.com and you could see all the places that you could see the film. But if you want to connect with me, it would be through Facebook, through Love Gilda.
Well, listeners, you can find those links up on our Inwood Artworks On Air webpage. Thank you again, Lisa, for joining me on this Artist Spotlight edition of Inwood Artworks On Air, where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home here in Upper Manhattan. If you have a moment, listener, please show some love for us right now by rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really does help. And I want to express deep thanks to 809 Restaurant and Lounge here in Inwood for hosting us, and to HeightSites.com for local uptown promotional support. Be sure to follow us on social media at Inwood Artworks to keep up with all that we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, live performances, and so much more. And you can support On Air and all our programming by making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate. Inwood Artworks On Air is made possible with funding from NYC and Company Foundation with the support from Manhattan Borough President Gail A. Brewer and the NYSCA Electronic Media and Film Grant Program in partnership with Wave Farm Media Arts Assistance Fund, and the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. Thank you again for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Artworks On Air.